Okay. Now you were talking about the sings together. Can you tell me about pub sing? I know that it's only been recently that it's become a nightly occurrence and it's exceedingly popular. So can you tell me about pub sing?
Well, pub-sing was a nightly occurrence for a long, long time, and then when we lost one of our performers who had been organizing it, we went into it, and only because he started to have a family, and we didn't lose him to anything permanent, and then he came back. Which is the way this has been, and we've been around long enough that people can step in and out of it from time to time. But pub-sing, a number of shows have done them, and many, many years ago, I was asked to come up with something by the man I worked for at the time that would fill up a space and not cost any money. And so although a couple of festivals had, I think Texas and Minnesota had I'm sorry, I'm rubbing myself there, but Texas and Minnesota had two pubs. They were generally only for participants and usually an after-hours place. And some of them had some lesser wine stands and things that had little seating areas. But I had a hillside that my boss wanted me to fill, and so I put in a tavern because I had this extra tarp, and I put in some tables only because then I could put in benches attached to the tables and people could sit there rather than stand on a hillside. And I figured it was easier to sit on the benches than to try and fill that area with people trying to stand there and falling down the hill. It was a very steep hill. And the tavern became the White Hart because a woman who worked there, I hired two women and a young man to be the bartender bouncer. And one of the women, Blair Hayes, brought a very pale deer's head from home, and Paul, who was the bartender, hung it up on the back wall, and everybody started calling it the White Hart, or the White Deer, or the White Stag, and then everybody, as things evolved, the discussion about a heart came up. And so it became the White Hart then, and it made a lot of money for the festival. It was very successful, appreciated by people, and started to have some atmosphere happen on its own. And some of the characters and street people would end up in there later in the evening as the show was winding down, and it became a gathering place, like a truck stop is, or any other establishment that people enjoy going to. So the first year we were here in Crownsville, we didn't have a tavern because I simply didn't have time to build everything that we wanted to build. And then the next year, we built the core of the tavern and had a couple extra tarps again, and it immediately took off and was very successful and in a much better location, not as hilly. And we started talking about doing a pub sing at that time because we had these people gathering there and needed something a little organized to do, and we started bringing in musical entertainment throughout the day. And then the Pirates evolved at this show through many manifestations, but Brad Howard has always been a part of it since the earliest days. And I think one of the times they started to get a little more organized is I asked them to do a promotional appearance for us on a boat in Annapolis. And I think they started getting more focused on sea chanties, and then a bunch of them came over to my townhouse at the time and drank a lot of wine and beer, and it started to get more organized, maybe through its own disorganization, but I think people were having fun with it. And then we developed a persona within the tavern, Jack Rackham, the tavern proprietor, and the pub sing started to really gel. Even though there were a lot of songs being sung before and other shows were doing some kind of pub sing, and we're trying to emulate the kind of tavern things that we did, and we really started doing taverns extensively, more so than other festivals, because we have a smaller site and we need a place to hold people to get them out of the streets so that other people can move around the fair easier. And so we figured if they'll spend 45 minutes there, that gives people the other opportunity to get around the fair, and then those people can move when they need to elsewhere because other people will come in behind them. And so the pub sing evolved then, and it's been a revolving or moving party at different taverns depending on which might have the best stage or setup, or it's always been shortly after the joust, so sometimes it was nearer the joust than it is now, so that the king could get there quicker, or if it had to be interactive with the joust, it was better to have it closer to the joust. But it's become a real gathering spot, and when we extended the festival and went a little later in the evening, we then set up 3 areas, the Dragon Inn and the White Hart, and kept the pipe organ going so that the 3 areas of the fair would have some noise going on in them so that people could keep going into the shops and there'd still be atmosphere happening, because now we're past 9 hours of being open and you can't ask the performers to perform for more than 9 hours. So we have a very engaging activity of music and Scottish themed things going on with the Wenches Guild and the Rogues at the Dragon Inn. And then you have what's been our longest running show now at the White Hart, and generally based around the Pirates doing the pub sing. And it creates a tremendous amount of community and sentimentality for people. And as the festival goes on later in the season, it tends to run longer and longer, and I keep telling them it's got to end on time, and my liquor permits are very specific about when I have to cut off things, and so we're trying to keep it reined in and intensify but concentrate the experience for everybody. And it gets a little unwieldy the bigger a crowd is. And a small known fact, that because we were a much smaller show then, we used to have a lot of, we had a prank day. And it's kind of evolved now into the Contra Day, where people come in costumes not of the Renaissance period. You'll see stormtroopers from Star Wars. You'll see a man dressed as Tigger or Eeyore or who knows what. You'll see World War II soldiers marching around. And it's generally people who are in Renaissance costume all the rest of the time, and this is a chance to delve a little deeper into their closet or to be here in something other than what they normally wear. But we used to have a prank day, and it got out of hand, and we had to stop that. But some of the best pranks were at the pub sing and became some of the most endearing stories about the festival, and then kind of contributed to the show, the pub show, and have that has created an opportunity during the pub sing for other things to happen that don't violate our no pranks anymore policy.